Welcome, everybody. Thanks. Thanks for joining. Well, before we kick things off, I just want to take a pulse of how things are going with the Atrium. This is supposed to be more of an Atrium-related meeting. Each of you are in slightly different places in Atrium, but as I think Mark will point out or has in the back of his mind, even if we're all in different places in the Atrium, we're all kind of in the same place. Yeah, because I think I'm going to pick on Mark to share an interesting experience in a little bit here. But how are things going? Is it rough? Parts of it are rough, aren't they?
Come on.
Yeah, they are. They're challenging.
Yeah.
Challenging, yes.
Yeah. Rough for me, I'll tell you. Sometimes trying to get it out, very challenging. Yeah. Let alone doing the work of it. My God. Yeah, it's difficult. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I don't think I ever promised it would be easy. I'm working on Diamond Lesson 4 currently, and man, is it a struggle. It's really a struggle to just get it out. Yeah, I've got the feeling, the sense of it. Hello, Sachin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Can't see your lips moving though. That's quite a trick. It's like a ventriloquism.
The hidden skill of mine.
Right. Yeah, but it's so I understand. I understand maybe from a different place. And I do want to address one thing too. I've said a few times that this is not me leading and you following, right? We're all walking this path together. I've just taken on the role right now of being responsible for sending scouts ahead and trying to figure out what that path looks like. Okay, so if that's a fair proposition for you, I think that's a better way to think of it in your own minds rather than you're coming to hear Pierce talk. And it's more along the lines of, I mean, listen, any one of you could be in this role right now. You could be doing this. I could literally turn a camera around and say, Mahazad or Kimberly or Sachin or Ian or Mark or Clarity or even Sam, right? And say, take it away, run with it. And what would come through you would be on point. It would be on point. It would be. Because you're all connected to it. Mark, please start us off with a story. I'm referring to Eminent.
Oh, right, yeah.
Okay.
Just before we start, there seems to be some sort of strange feedback coming from, I think it's from you.
Is it from me? Okay.
I think so.
Might be from Molly.
Is it Molly?
Is it me?
Could be. I'm not sure.
Okay. Let me just.
Try muting yourself if you can.
Okay, hang on a second.
Molly, would you like me to mute you?
Yeah, would you mind? I can't find the mute button.
Okay, Molly is muted.
The man with the power. I was
Everybody has the power. It's not just me. You just go over the picture.
Apparently, it's not me. I was searching for the button. All right.
Sure.
All right. Mark, have a bit of a run, please.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed of late is how I can be thinking about things and then find out that other people are thinking about things at the same time, or not necessarily instantly at the same time, but around the same time. And one of the things that came up was last Sunday when you spoke about Eminent, and you asked if anybody had heard of it, and I stuck my hand up. I didn't have a clue what it was, but what happened was that I was thinking about various names and words and playing with various words, not in an anagrammy way, but just trying to be open to new things. And one of the things that came up was this word Emion, and that was probably around about Wednesday or Thursday, not just gone, but the week before.
Now pause this for 1 second. It's
Yeah.
important to note that this is before you had read the lesson that actually talks about Emians, and
That's
it
right.
was before we had talked about it last week.
That's right.
This word just popped into your head.
Yeah, and it's not a word that I'd ever heard before.
Yeah.
And that's why last Saturday, was it Saturday we spoke? Yeah, it was Saturday.
Right, Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah. And when that word came up, I just sat there and thought, okay, things are definitely getting conductive and things are definitely transferring, because being aware that the way that things work is that you're getting this and then writing it down, and then it comes out a week or so later.
Mm.
So this would have been in you, and somehow, because of what's going on, it's transferred over.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely amazed by that.
Yeah.
Which is
And
why
it's not the first time, is it? It happened the week before as well.
Yeah.
When you had sent out that thing on angels, yeah. And
yeah, because the interesting thing is that I got it and then sent it around, and then I got an email. I've tried to get the pronunciation right. Azod said that had come up on your YouTube thing a couple of days beforehand as well. So again, it's showing that there's something that's going on, because maybe it's a coincidence. I don't think so. But there's obviously something that is going on common in all of us, and that something is transferring between us all.
Yeah, right. And I would have to agree with that. So, Mark, we had kind of had a brief dialogue via email, and I mentioned something about domains.
Yeah.
And that piqued your interest.
Yeah, because this thing about a domain and a dome has been spoken about years ago in the old email.
Yeah.
That was a term that came up
a
couple of, was it yesterday? About the old email, because we were playing about with, is this the email, is this the new email, or however to describe it. Yeah. And the word that came, or the phrase that came to mind yesterday, was the old email, referring to what we previously been in. And two things came to mind. One of them I didn't put in the email because it didn't come to me until afterwards. One of them was to do with that kind of like a cover, a protection, a pressure cooker, if you like, to allow things to build. And then the second thing came to mind: star sapphire.
Right on. Yeah.
That it's literally, no, I shouldn't say that word, because it's too frequently used. It's so much like the nature of star sapphire that, okay, it isn't a round thing, it's a dome thing, but it's still allowing in what needs to come in, holding and containing, and allowing a pressure to build.
Right. Now let's pause there for a moment.
Pause.
Because you're exactly right that it is a star sapphire process. But let's break that down a little bit further, because I think this will help give more insight into the nature of star sapphire. From the idea of a dome or a domain that forms up around a new endeavor. Now, first of all, I don't know that it's actually right to say the old Emin, because the old Emin wasn't even the Emin. You see, that's a word that provides a cloak for something.
Yeah.
It could have been called something else. And throughout the eons that it's been poking around in our solar system, it has been called other things at various times, right?
Uh-huh.
But the nature of how it forms up is that it has to have a domain in which to work. To explain this, I'll refer you to the idea of a bubble trapped under an air bubble trapped underwater. All right. Sometimes you get a glass and an air bubble is clinging to the side on the inside of that. Now, what it is it's the appearance of something higher within the realm of something lower. In the case of an air bubble, it's something more rarefied. You see that the gas that's trapped inside there is not endemic to the medium of water. And so it has to form this kind of shield around it to be able to preserve something higher. Otherwise, you tap the side of the glass and it rises up and it returns to the source of its arising, which was the atmosphere to begin with. Okay. Now, anytime an emin, if you want to call it that, which I'm fine with, anytime an emin forms up in the world, it has to be encased in something called a domain. It's like a bubble. Okay. It's now referring to the idea of, you can also think of it in terms of a womb, which people generally misunderstand what's happening inside of a womb. Okay. They think that it's a complete area of insulation, when in fact what it is it's a filter. It's a one-way filter. It allows higher things to come in, but doesn't allow them to escape. Okay. You know the idea of when a lady gives birth, right? Or I should say, let's start prior to that. When a lady becomes pregnant, something happens. This kind of spark happens. And for a while, this process just kind of continues, right? Cells divide, multiply, and divide, and multiply. What were the terms we used for that? It was aggregation and something else. It doesn't matter.
Condensation.
Huh?
Condensation.
Condensation and aggregation. Yeah, right. Okay. So that's happening, but that's the biological aspect of it. What happens inside is a domain is created. Okay. So that at a certain point in the pregnancy, something higher can come in. And I'm referring, of course, to the spirit. Yeah. And the piggyback soul, which comes in actually earlier. The soul does. Anyway, it's not the point at the moment, but it allows that breach from something higher, but then doesn't allow it to escape. And so what happens is the electrics continue to build and build and build and build. It's not coming from the mother, it's coming from the universe, continuing to pump that signal in. Yeah. And what happens at a certain point is that becomes so punchy, so vibrant, so energetic, that it breaks through that domain. Now, at this point in time, it was sealed in there, and the mother's electrics couldn't look into it, okay? Couldn't detect because of what's on the outside of it, just like in the water. It's water on the outside, it's only air on the inside, you see. So nothing foreign seems to be at play. But as soon as that domain is then broken, the mother's complex itself goes, something foreign in me, right? Something not me in me, and begins to reject it. Yeah. And that's when childbirth begins to occur. Now, we can take the same thing. This is exactly what happens, but here's, let me back up, because this is very important to understand. Not every new arising creates a domain. It really depends on what the source of the arising is, right? You can get some Looney Tune down the street that decides to start his or her own religion. Yeah. The religion of the spaghetti monster, which, believe it or not, there was a thing. Yeah. It's true. It's true. That doesn't form a domain. And the reason why is because it's already part of the culture. It's already part of the domain of the planet. You see, there is a bit of Looney Tune just floating around the planet sometimes. Yeah. And it will have a particular manifestation, you see. But when something truly higher does come in, It has to create this protection around it until it can escape that. Okay, now this is the phase that we're in. We're in that cocoon at the moment. We're not in the escape into the world. Now, the reason for that, people don't generally understand this concept that esoteric knowledge or occult knowledge is quantifiable. There's only so much of it available at any particular time. Okay, this is why, you know, if you go read Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa or Eliphas Levi, or, you know, all of these kind of big names in occult back from the 1100s to the 1500s, roughly, none of it's new. None of it actually can do much for you. Yeah, do you remember my analogy last week of you have an infinite number of people in a pit and you're just throwing pennies in, but the escape cost is $1, right? You remember that analogy? No one's ever going to get out. And that's kind of the situation that the world is in at the moment, because there's not enough occult knowledge that's generally available in the world to allow anyone to actually benefit from it. Okay, so a sub thing has to be created. Something has to be bound in a small shell, if you will, to allow whatever's new from an occult or esoteric standpoint that's coming in at the moment to actually benefit those people. And what's supposed to happen, which rarely happens, unfortunately, but what's supposed to happen is that when that bursts out, you know, then we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 new things. You have 9 new domains created. Interesting, eminent way. Anagrams to when 9 met, doesn't it? The eminent way. Anyway.
Oh,
Yeah, but that's how it's supposed to work. But generally what happens is it busts out and just becomes part of the general frequency of the planet, instead of each person that was part of the endeavor to begin with incubating something new within themselves.
right.
All right, I'm pausing there. Mark, where do we go from here in this regard?
Okay. What comes to mind is, what is it that can be done to prevent people coming out of the larger domain into an individual domain too soon? Because if they come out too soon, then, like you're saying, it will be absorbed back in. So I suppose there's 2 parts to that. Is one is what can be done to stop it being reabsorbed, and secondly, when to know that it's the time to come from the larger group, a larger group domain, into individual.
Well, so let's address one thing that you said regarding prevention. Preventing, you know, people leaving the domain, right? That's being created. And I would say that we don't actually do that.
Right.
Okay. And the reason why is very simple, because it's not my life. You know, even the lady sitting next to you, Mark, it's not her life. It's not your life. Yeah. Play it is not mine. So people should be free to do as they need to do.
Yes.
In that aspect. And you never know, honestly. You know, sometimes it could be I've said this many times. I'll put it this way. A person will leave an engagement endeavor, a work, for generally 2 reasons. One, they found what they were looking for. Or 2, they realize that they're never going to find what they're looking for. Right? Yeah. And it's okay. Yeah, because each life, as I look at each one of you right now on the screen in front of me, you're all very sacred to me. Whatever you choose to do is absolutely fine. Now, that brings us to the real reason, right? It has to do with opting in and choosing to be a part of something. If it is in your nature and way in yourself to opt into this, to choose to be a part of it, you'll find no prevention here. Yeah, because that's what my life is about. It's being generative in this way. Now, we fast forward to another thing. Having said that, as you choose to be a part of this, I will fight for you, always. I will always fight for you. I will always offer everything that I am to be able to protect that. Yeah. And without the wish to keep you. What I mean is that I want each and every one of you at some point in time come to me and say, Pierce, thank you so much. It's been great. Stay in touch. I'm going to go start my own Eminent. If you want to, right? Even if it's just a one-person Eminent, even if it's just you. Yeah. And the reason why I hold that stance is because this is not a cult, ladies and gentlemen. This is not something where you need to be associated with me, hanging on to me, always waiting for the next spoonful, that sort of thing. It's more me in the kitchen with all of you by my side, and I'm chopping vegetables and someone else is stirring the soup and someone else is, heating the oven, and we're all doing this together. Yeah. Maybe you might be learning how to cook a certain dish from me, but that's about it. We're all equal in the kitchen, if that makes sense. So there's my address back.
Okay. One of the things that shows me is how when people can talk,
When people what?
When people talk and and put a question, there's a lot that people have in their head that they don't actually express when they speak. The reason for saying that is that what I spotted was that I wasn't quite clear enough what I meant about people coming out too soon.
Mm.
It wasn't referring to people's own choice, because as you say, that is their own choice.
Mm-hmm.
What I was referring to is how when it was described that the cover, the domain was taken down in the 80s so that people would get on with their own thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I was more referring to, that if people are left to, they go from a collective thing to an individual thing without being ready, without it being their choice.
Are you talking about when the Emin domain was
taken down in an 88? Yeah, that cover got taken off.
Well, truth be told, it wasn't so much about that.
Okay.
In the end, people started giving Leo a bunch of trouble. And just like you and I, he was here to do something. Yeah. And if it becomes interfering to a man or lady's life to do what they need to do on this planet, then all bets are off. Yeah. At that point, it wasn't so much about releasing so that people could go do their thing and be themselves, right? Because very few were probably ready to do that.
Yeah.
To begin with.
Yeah, very much so.
Look, we've talked about this a few times. And I'm going to invite something into the meeting, okay?
Okay.
Don't be alarmed. Yeah, and Molly, You had even asked about this, didn't you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Remind me what I said.
I seem to recall you had asked me about the use of this symbol.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This'll enlighten you a bit. Okay, all of you, I think. How do you make that? Not just how do you walk up to the chalkboard and replicate that, but first of all, do you know what that is? Do you know what this really is called?
It's a Jupiter symbol, correct?
Well, yeah, it is. It is. So let's do another one. Okay, who can tell me why these are the way they are? Mars and Venus and here, you can't see. Hold on, my big head's in the way. There, now you can see, yeah? Aren't these strange? Who has worked? Who can work this with me? I mean, you look at these symbols, right, that the ancient alchemists came up with, and they're sort of alphabetic, aren't they? I mean, in a way, they're kind of alphabetic, but they're not all at the same time. It's because they are not they're not letters. They're not even symbols. They're what's called sigils. Do you know what a sigil is? No.
Oops.
Mark, do you know what a sigil is?
No, it isn't a word that I've heard before.
Hmm. I worked it out the other day. I'm going to jump on my phone because I need to reconnect to it. Yeah, okay?
Sure.
Bear with me for a moment here.
Okay.
This reminds me of Darth Sidious of Star Wars.
Darth Sidious. Yes. Darth Pierce.
No, you're not.
Force is strong in you. Yes. Hold on.
Sidious was the name of Emperor Palpatine, for those who don't know.
Yeah, right. Emperor palpitations. Yeah, I need some room here. I'm gonna give you a couple other ones. Oops, that's an arrow, okay. It's not looking much like it. Yeah. Do you know who that is? Can you see it? Is it clear, coming through clearly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't zoom more. Let's do another one. This component aspect. Here's one some of you will be familiar with. And here's another one. Gotta love this one. This one's great. Who recognizes that one? Can you see it?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah?
Can't place it.
You should.
Sam?
No, you can't place it. No.
So it isn't any sort of scientific thing, though.
It could be, but it looks familiar, but I can't place it.
Right.
Yeah, okay. It's all right. It shows up in the Gemrod book. Yeah, where this mysterious figure, if you know the Gemrod book,
Yeah.
this mysterious figure comes, yeah? And he says, I draw a line thus, and another thus. Yeah.
This is where I go.
Any of you remember that? Huh?
Yeah, vaguely. Now that you say it, yeah.
Okay.
And it's where I sit here and say, I should read the book more.
It's all right. It's all right. This is Amhope, by the way. Amhope, Amhope. This is Agla. This is Toyer. And that's Merlin. From the book. Well, you didn't get the other ones from the book. I'm just doing a bit of a wind into what sigils are versus symbols. Now, in order to understand sigils, you really have to know a whole lot about astrology and astronomy and things like solar mechanics. And so Platus is chasing cats around down here because they both got down here. So if you see me smiling, that's what's going on. She's herding cats, as they say, at the moment. This is a sigil. Okay, now let me tell you what they are, because I think if I drag this on too long, everyone's just going to go, I don't know in the end. Yeah?
Okay.
You know bouillon cubes. Do you know what a bouillon cube is?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like an entire can of broth in a little square. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you will you let Ian in, please? A bouillon cube. Do you know what I'm talking about? A bouillon cube. People add it to water to make broth. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like if you took broth, soup, and you just let it keep evaporating and boiling down and boiling down and boiling down, and then you took all of the scrapings, packed it into a cube. That's what that would be. That's what a sigil is. Okay. A sigil is an entire coding, an entire domain of something, actually, boiled down into a bouillon cube so that just what remains is its essence, its essential nature. And they are extremely powerful. Take a second, if you will, please, just to register these 4 symbols or sigils that I've drawn on the board here.
Yep.
Versus, something non-sigillic, if that's a word. Okay? Complete random, you see? Just complete randomness. Do you sense a difference between this and this? This feels just like, okay, whatever, right? You don't get much from that. These over here, it's almost like your instinct, your soul, knows that it means something, but can't quite place it. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels right.
There's a sense about it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I will give you a very, very basic idea. Take Merlin and Toyer and Agla and Amhope all away for a minute. By the way, Mark, you'll probably appreciate this. Have you heard the term Agla, A-G-L-A, before?
Yes.
Yeah. In what reference?
It's from one of the trilogy books. I can't recall which one. I think it might be Franstrom.
I'm talking more about the Judaic sources of it.
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Anyway,
Something
no
to
worries.
look into.
Yeah. Even the word Agla itself is actually very close to a symbol, but Agla is always the one that is put out there, right? The one that everyone knows about. Amhope is the one that no one knows about, the invisible consort to Agla. Amhope is an Egyptian reference, but also put together, they spell Alpha and Omega, which of course is not Judaic, but Greek in origin, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so this will probably get a bit more into groundwork that should be saved for tomorrow, but this is what's pressing to get in. Okay. Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right. So we have something like this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we go A, Okay. So I've just, and for those of you who have done playing with numerology, and you can like come up with the root number, right, for something. Does everyone know what I'm talking about as far as the root number goes? Now, if you don't, just look at me and tell me that you don't. Okay, you don't.
Take your-
Pierce, I'll just note. I'll just note that I'm a complete noob at this.
Yeah.
No astrology, no astronomy, no symbology. Haven't put in the work to read any of this. Don't know if I ever will. But
No, no worries.
feel free to ignore me.
I would never ignore you. I'll show you just real quick how to come up with the root number of something. Okay, and this goes back to the days of ancient Greece, and even before. Originally, it came from Kabbalah, which is the Judaic mysticism. As well, that's actually not true. It's Chaldean mysticism, taken in by the Judaic thing, and then transferred eventually to Greece and to Rome, and eventually to us in certain respects. So you take Pierce, P, right? That's a 7. That comes to 7. I 9, E 5, R is 9, C is 3, and E is 5. Okay, and then we add all those up. You can strike the 9s because you'll find out mathematically that they generally cancel each other. Okay, so who's quick with numbers? You got 7 plus 5.
12 plus
12.
3, 15 plus 5, 20.
All right, so we got 20.
Yeah.
Total here. Okay, so then you say 20, and then 2 plus 0 is 2. So ultimately, the word Pierce boils down to a root of 2. Okay, anytime you have 1792 or whatever, you can boil it down again and again until it comes down to a single number. All right, now that's level 1. That for those of you who were in the Emin, were probably taught within the first 3 or 4 weeks of attending something. Let's see. Let's now do it this way. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, I'm not teaching you the full version because that would require weeks and weeks and weeks having to do with the planetary aspects of things. But if we take Pierce, we say 7, 9, 5, 9, 7, 9, 5, 9, 3, 5, 3, 5. We come up with something that looks like that. Okay, and then you indicate the start and the end. Sorry, I'm moving away. Indicate the start and the end of it. That would be a sigil for Pierce. You see? Now, think about this from the standpoint of if you want to power your way with certain symbols, and you decide to come up with an expression that best suits something like your true will, or even an intention. I want more care in my life, for example. You can boil that down using this type of thing into a particular sigil that you carry with yourself. All right? Because what it does is it takes it all and it creates a bouillon cube out of it, if you understand. Yeah. You've got the letters, you've got the numbers, you then place it against a particular square. Now, the reason why I say that it has to do with various planets also is because instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is just more of an intro type of things, Saturn has its own numeric pattern. Jupiter has its own numeric pattern. Mars, Venus, Mercury, so on and so forth. They all have their own numeric patterns. So it's not necessarily, 1, 2, 3. It's like 1, 8, 7, 5, 6, 4, and so on. Do you understand? And some of them are many, many by many, many. That's where this really came from, and that's where this came from, and that's where this came from. The ancients boiled down the essence of something like Mars or Aries into something very fundamental using a system similar to this. Right? That's why they have so much power associated with it. So, Molly, you said the symbol for Jupiter. Well, yes, but it's more than that. You see, now it's more than that. What it is, it's the symbol for everything boiled down into what Jupiter represents.
Yeah.
And at this level, it becomes a machine to do a specific job. Anyone looking at this, even if they haven't learned all of this type of stuff, is going to have that inner sense of something that lives within that because it was coded as such. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
What does this have to do with domains? Mark, what do you think it has to do with domains?
What comes to mind is that whatever the sigil is will have an influence over what the domain that sigil is having an influence on.
Very true. It's the central transmitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you take an entire work like, the Eminent Way, or actually, I've done the one for Eminent Way. It's actually quite beautiful. But you take something like the Eminent Way, and you gather all of these ideas that go into it, and you boil it down into one particular sigil, right? It becomes a power source at that point in time. It becomes a transmitter into the domain. The domain is what reflects it back in upon itself so that it can grow and so that it can become more vibrant.
Yeah.
And by the way, truth be told, Eminent Way is just a placeholder name until the right one comes along. Yeah. Just like babies aren't necessarily named until after they're born sometimes. Yeah. Parents play with the names of their children while they're still in utero, don't they? What about, Huckleberry? What about Ichabod, right?
Yeah, we played about with the names even after they were born. We said their name and then registered what came back.
Yeah, right. I presume, Leo even said that Gemrod is also a placeholder name. I presume that when we know what Eminent Way is called, we'll also know what Gemrod is called. It drives me crazy, doesn't it? Almost weekly. It's true, isn't it? See, I've got to get her in camera. Almost weekly. Almost every 3 days or so. I come to her and I say, that's it. I'm getting rid of Eminent Way. We're going to do something else, right? We're going to name it something else. Everyone can just come find us. Well, I would invite you all, of course, but it doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
And short of calling it Ichabod, it hasn't come yet. So we'll figure it out. Heinrich. Yeah, all kinds of great names. No, but it's the central transmitter within a domain. So in the Emin, this was the central transmitter. But what it also is a vacuum cleaner. And that's the unfortunate aspect of that particular symbol, is because it takes produce that people generate in their work and in their lives, right? In their Emin life, I should say, and it siphons it back, right? Takes it back in. And it has to do with a shorthand way of ensuring one's immortality. You see, the Om symbol of the Hindus and Buddhists are also sigils, not symbols. Yeah. But it's not a vacuum, it's a doorway. It's a doorway, it's a gateway. If you stare at that symbol and put yourself into it and become it, it'll take you to another universe where that Buddha lives. And we'll do something. So, what do you think so far? Didn't know I was going to go here today. Reiki has them, don't they?
Reiki has some pretty powerful symbols.
Absolutely. Are they symbols though, or are they sigils? Now that you know the difference, what would you estimate?
The concept of Reiki is a little bit different. I don't think, I mean, if they are sigils, they are of the type of Om, as opposed to of the type of the representations that you had earlier for Mars and Venus.
Yes.
Again, I'm not well versed enough. I haven't practiced Reiki symbols for over a year and a half. Even
Yeah.
after taking level 1 again with Kimberly, I kind of lost. Like I said, I didn't go deep enough to see the value of it, or maybe it was very, the value wasn't clear to me, because I practiced the symbols. Like I would actually do all the Reiki symbols. I did it on my house, I did it in my car, I did it in my computer workstation. If I went to play, any games, I would go do it there, and it seemed to have worked a couple times. But then I kept doing it, and it stopped working.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if I wasn't doing it deeply enough, or I was. I don't know what happened, so I kind of gave up. But I'll go look into it again at some point.
Well, let's talk about the difference between a sign, a symbol, and a sigil for a second, just so that we're all clear and using the same vernacular for things. Okay. A sign is of two natures. A sign is always a symbol. A symbol is not always a sign, first of all, but a sign will either guide you somewhere or warn you about something. Yeah, we see them. That's the most common thing that we have in our lives is signs. Stop sign, yield. I mean, these types of things. They're signs. The skull and crossbones. To warn you of dangerous chemicals, or the sign for radiation. Those types of things. Those would be signs. Yeah, they guide you. They're guiding. A symbol is very close to a sigil, but it's not mathematically worked. That's the one difference. A symbol takes emotional notions that occur in the astral light and physically represents them. Okay, so those are symbols. A sigil is like a symbol, but it's a mathematical representation also of generally a whole slew of concepts, not just one in particular. We did Pearson. It was a very kind of small name. You come across these sigils sometimes when you're doing occult research into things like angels, right? And they have these very complicated sigils going with them. They're all mathematical. They're showing a number pattern, which is one of the fundamental aspects of creation. So, yeah. Something new to play with, something new to ponder.
Yeah.
But we got off the topic of domains. You mentioned another word in your email, Mark, having to do with plasma. It's not just a domain, but a plasma domain.
Yeah, that was what it was spoken of.
Yeah. Do you know the difference between a plasma domain and a non-plasma domain?
No, because again, explanations were sketchy.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to put that in a tactful way.
Say what?
I'm trying to put that in a tactful way.
Yeah, sketchy. Well,
saying they didn't explain it.
Yeah. Well, maybe they didn't know it. That's okay.
Yeah, that's what we came to. Yeah, in the week.
Well, to put it quite simply, a plasma condition needs a power source. All right. Don't do this, but I'll tell you how to make plasma. I mean, physically in the physical world. All right. Most of you could probably do it. It takes either a candle or a grape and a microwave oven. Because I discovered this when I was probably about 8 years old. I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I did it. I lit a candle and stuck it in the microwave. And I'll tell you, I created a little piece of the sun here on the planet. A little unscheduled sunrise happening in my grandmother's microwave. But the reason why it happened is because the microwave radiation, right? It interacts with the gas coming off of the candle, or the grape, oddly enough, will kind of exude gas as it gets hot. And it's enough energy to be able to strip off all of the electrons on the molecules. And so over here, you have a bunch of electrons, and over here, you have a bunch of cores. Yeah. And as they interact and then get separated again, interact and get separated again, they go, yeah, and you have this. Now, please don't go try this at home. Just trust me on this one, because it's literally scared the hell out of me. If you can only imagine. But yeah, so a plasma condition requires a power source. A plasma condition happens when a person is separated from their personality. In other words, the essence of a person is separated from their personality. Okay? They exist outside of each other within the same environment. And you get very interesting things happening in a plasma condition, one of which is you can't speak. Right? You don't function the way you normally would, because you're outside of that kind of connected state. Mark, last week, the thing that you described where I talked about, the centers expanding out from one another.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of a plasma condition. Now, do you understand?
Yeah.
What's useful from a development standpoint about a plasma condition is that it can cause a rearrangement. It can cause what are called isotopes to form, if you want to take it chemically. But isotopes in the realms of human engineering is that once everything comes back, it comes back differently. It comes back in a more enhanced type of way. Yeah? An isotope, for example, like, you have hydrogen, a hydrogen atom, which is you got one proton and one electron orbiting it. That's normal. Okay. An isotope of hydrogen would be like two protons with one electron orbiting, or vice versa. I can't remember which it is, but you understand that it's the same thing but different.
Is that not right?
Yeah. Called heavy hydrogen.
It would be one proton and one neutron, and then one electron.
Right. Okay. Right. So, but it comes back together differently, doesn't it?
Yeah, it comes back together differently, but it still chemically reacts as hydrogen. It's just got slightly different properties when it comes to the nuclear side of it.
Yeah. Right. And that's what a plasma condition is meant to cause in humans. Okay. It was an analogy of what happens when enough force comes into a human's life, to a person's life, to cause that sort of separation of the spiritual from the mundane, for a reorganization and then a reassimilation, so that you walk out of that environment as something the same but different than what you were.
That explains something.
Yeah. Tell me what it explains.
Yeah, what came to mind is when we're talking about the kind of physics that has just been spoken of which Sam knows much more than me. It's to do. Correct me if I'm wrong, or don't correct me, because that'll blow me theory. Right?
Don't correct me if I'm wrong, but
if it isn't right, say so. How do ions relate to this?
Different number of electrons.
Right.
So you can either put more electrons on, which will make it a negatively charged ion, or you can strip them off, which will create a positively charged ion.
Right. Because this ties in with what all these ideas were coming in about ion, and then putting different letters with ion, which is how it came to this thing about Eminent.
right.
But it also ties in with what happened at one stage in the human's history where Leo tried to change his name from Leo to Ion because he was going into a different nature of work. But unfortunately, people being people and everybody his habitual ways are the same, and everybody carried on calling him Leo, even though he kept saying, "Will you call me Ion? I've changed my name." Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And in the end, he just reverted back to, at least publicly, to using the name Ion. Reverted back to using Leo, but I'm wondering if, to himself, he continued with that name Ion for that period of time, if not beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll have to ask him someday. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah,
I would say maybe.
that makes sense.
Let's talk about Emians for a second, since you brought them in.
Mhm.
Right? It's not just one that you create. Yeah. If you've gotten to this section here in the studies regarding Emians, you can make a dozen of them or 100 of them in your lifetime. Yeah. Each doing something, each a part of you doing that thing. Yeah. So you have other names by which you are known in creation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just Mark.
No.
You go traveling, astral traveling, I mean, or mental. You might be surprised because something will come up and call you something different than what you're used to, and yet it'll feel right.
Yeah.
You have other names in creation. The Egyptians had 5, didn't they? They had 5. The kings of Egypt had 5 names for various
Didn't know that.
functions. Yeah. Right. Okay.
We're going.
I'm
all
getting. It's coming back on me now.
Mm.
You understand? The force levels are starting to come back to me. So I want to let you cook on things for a bit. Mark, is it a good time to kind of wind things down?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it could also be that because that Egypt came in. Not that Egypt is Egypt, but the fact that something else was brought in. That it might have just been another thing that's just added in that's too much. So
Yeah, right. Good point.
Yeah, as an explanation of why that coming back to you.
Yeah.
Started.
I mean, everything wants to be talked about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in meetings like this. I mean, I'm sure it's probably the same in your homes too.
Yeah.
Start bringing something up, and all of a sudden, something its friend comes and joins. And Egypt wanted to have a run when I started talking about Hope.
Right.
Yeah, that's when it really started showing up.
Explains it.
Yeah, and isn't it cold? Well, you're sitting right next to the heater, but do you feel that lower coldness? Yeah, that's Egypt. Egypt does that. Egypt comes in from the ground up. It makes you real stiff once it gets up to about here. Hard to move.
Okay.
Yeah, numbing. Did you know that? Have you played around with it enough to know?
No.
Well, have you or no?
No.
No. Yeah. That's how you know Egypt is trying to make a grand entrance. It's freezing cold, even with the heater on. Do you feel that?
I still feel it, yeah.
Yeah. It's not just the physical temperature. It's gets cold and begins to create stiffness. Yeah, pretty soon I'll be limping around like Leo did, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about Egypt if you need to. Egypt itself was a domain. What you know of Egypt, though, is not. It's the carcass of it. It's the shell of it.
Yeah.
All right. I have said, and I do actually mean this symbolically. I don't mean this literally, but when you look at the Great Pyramid of Giza, right, with its little lines on all the sides, my perspective art is not great. Okay, apologies. What you're really seeing, and I've meant this symbolically in the past, is something, more like a, what do they call those obelisks, don't they? Right, something like that. What I mean by that is that everything that Egypt was is under the surface of what we see today. Yeah. And you do see these shapes, don't you, all over Egypt? Just funny that they didn't put one under the pyramid, but there is one there electrically. Straight down. Yeah. Dozens and dozens of miles. But what you see of Egypt is the last grasp of a much richer culture. Culture is not the right word.
Civilization?
No, not even that. Well, probably domain, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Leo tried his whole life to get to Egypt. And despite what you may have heard, he never got there. And neither have I. It's capped. It's very, very difficult. Maybe someday.
When you say got to Egypt, are you talking about actually going there?
No, this
Yeah.
Egypt.
Right.
Yeah, the one underneath. Everything. You know, sometimes you walk along the beach and you come across shells. What we think of as Egypt today is mistaking the shell for the mollusk that lived in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But doesn't say you shouldn't try. But really, Egypt's purpose was to re-engineer us. Yeah, we can get into all these things, like talking about the genes of Isis and Genesis. Yeah, all of these alterations that happened.
Yeah.
You know, this winged disc that you see so often in Egyptian art, right? See this kind of symbology? It's opposed to this. In other words, it's talking about this here. You see how this I don't have the what was it, unibrow, right? Most ancient humans had a straight line going across. This, because of the activation, or the potential, I should say, of the pineal gland, causes separation in there, right? You no longer have that heavy ridge in there. This is the physical manifestation. This split here is the physical manifestation of what's happening inside the brain. This is the winged disc of Egypt. Has to do with one of the aspects of the human that was altered.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm wondering if what would be good is to actually have an Egypt night.
You want one?
Yeah, because you're right. It wants to play tonight, but it's a case of, does it fit with what we've been doing so far?
It's just a bit of a run today. You know, I meant to be Atrium-like, and Atrium didn't want to show up. So it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, we can certainly do something. We can scratch the surface of it, because to really do Egypt properly, we'll all need to be in the same environment and create a temple condition, right? Which we can't do right now. Templeize what we're doing.
Yeah.
This speaks to something, though. I'll erase it. But it does speak to something, that whatever happens in the unseen worlds generally has a, not always, but generally has a physical effect.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they say that they built the pyramids and all of these types of things using simple bronze tools. How can you even cut a stone with bronze? How can you do any of that stuff? You can't. Yeah. You want to talk about a plasma condition? That's what they had. The word pyramid itself means fire in the middle. Did you know that? Probably. Pyramid, fire in the middle. Yeah. All right, Mark, we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Okay.
We'll touch on some Egypt. You know, the reason why it's pressing in has to do with the whole idea of mummification. Mummies, the reason why they protected the bodies the way that they did was so that they could have something that they could attach to astrally, right? Their astral form kind of holding the hand, holding the corpsey hand of that mummy for a few thousand years, so that they could finally let go now and reincarnate into our time. Now, all the mummies are kind of breaking apart now. The reason why is because they're not used anymore. Now, those beings that lived 8,000 years ago, 6,000, 4,000, just kind of holding on to that, yeah, for as long as possible until they can reincarnate in today. Now's the time, though. Probably looking at a bunch of Egyptians right now and don't even know it. Yeah. Walk like an Egyptian. Yeah, good. Okay. All right. Bring us out, Mark.
I'm struggling because of Egypt. Yeah.
Creeping in over there too?
Yeah, it wants to come and play.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it always wants to come and play because it gets charged when it does. Yeah, I mean, thinking about what's been said tonight to do with domains, and particularly this thing to do with plasma domain. For us, I think we're going to be playing with that, and I don't just use those words lightly. When I say playing with it over this week, it's getting into it, seeing what comes of it. Yeah, and rest assured about that candle thing, we don't have a microwave, so we're not going to go that route. Yeah,
so you won't be off making plasma.
Yeah.
I was such an experimental kid. Yeah.
I've got one question, Pierce.
Yeah.
After that experiment, how long did that microwave last?
Oddly enough, it didn't seem to damage it. It freaked me out so much that it was almost instantly that I opened the door. And it's a good thing. The weird thing about plasma is that it actually acts very much like a life form. Plasma scientists who study it are constantly bewildered by some of its behavior, how it copulates, how it consumes, how it, it's almost like an entity. Really, it is.
Yeah.
And I unknowingly ran the risk of, opening the microwave door that one would just kind of float out because they can do that. But fortunately, they didn't. Yeah. But anyway, didn't seem to damage the microwave.
That's good.
I think I got my behind damaged. For that experiment.
Yeah, it sounds a bit more spectacular than the experiment that I did when I was 8. This is going to sound absolutely daft, right? But I got a small torch bulb and I painted it with black puddle paint. Yeah. It's because I wanted to see what would happen when I turned it on and black light came out.
Oh.
Now, obviously, it didn't work. I mean, this one here, Sol, right? He's told all of his friends about this, and they tease me rotten about it. Yeah, didn't you?
It's good though, It is good to be able to approach life with with the experimentation.
Yeah, and I was about 8 as well at the time. Yeah, so it's obviously a strange age. Yeah.
Well, along the lines of don't try this at home. My uncle had I think it was a 22 rifle, right? And I found the bullets to it. And so experimenter as I am, right, but a very lucky one, I wondered what would happen if I buried it in the ground and then tried to hit it with a hammer. Would it shoot down into the ground? Now, obviously not knowing the physics that I know now, how dangerous that could be, right? It would not shoot up and down to the ground. It would tamp itself and come back up at me. But so at least I'm lucky. Nothing happened. It's just probably buried somewhere now. Yeah. Are you glad I'm alive? Me too. Yeah. Good. All right. Thank you all for coming. It's been joyful. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Hey.